Can you hear us, Ty and Gary? Thumbs up, good deal.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. You sound like a horse.
Hopefully a winner.
Well, welcome to the Morgan City Council work meeting, May 24th, 2022. Also like to welcome Chad. He's to join us today. So to get started, we won't have any minutes to approve. Denise is gonna have some stuff she needs to take care of in Idaho. So item number 1 is the final approval of the Colville Riverbend subdivision. There's 2 lots there. It's a pretty cool name. Do you have anything sticking out? Dave, you was at the Planning Commission meeting.
Yeah, I just report that the Planning Commission considered a favorable forwarding or to the council for that. I was talking to your dad a little bit after, Chad, about the floodplain. And he said it's been a long time. In fact, I think he mentioned 18 years that you've been working on that. Holy smokes. Where does the home sit in relation to the floodplain then? Have you got a map?
You got a map on?
I think is it the one on page 4 in our packet?
Or just to verbalize it.
Okay. I think she can get us you can get us a picture.
She should be able to get it pulled up.
Oh, perfect.
We'll give her just a minute.
So it does not lie within the floodplain. So there we are. With a 30-foot setback, it'll sit approximately. It's all good. There we go.
There we go.
All right. So with the 30-foot setback, this is a 35-foot setback, so it'll sit a little bit closer to the road here. It's 12 feet off the property line here, and it's approximately 60 feet worth of frontage here, and then extending 45 feet back. So the rear of the home will be approximately here. So it doesn't even nick where this is the 50-year floodplain. I'm not quite sure which one this is. So a rectangle in approximately this area here. Later on, we plan on building a shed here to block the view and whatever electronics come off the substation that's down the road. So we'd have enough room. So it's definitely on this half a lot, but I don't expect extending further than 10 feet past the current dwelling here. So somewhere in here will be the back of it.
The line in the back then that touches the Weber River, is that the floodplain? No, the one just above. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, this is the 2017 FEMA map. Showed this being the current floodplain. I'm sure you talked a lot about how the substation sits in the floodplain and how it's really not accurate. We took independent elevations, and my surveyor even said that's really not accurate. I then went to Dana with Jay Jones and just said, am I going to have any headache with it? And she said, you're not. A possible shed that wants to be built here will need a different permit down the road, but even at that point, it shouldn't be a problem.
Are there any FEMA rules for flood that you have to pay attention to for the home construction?
My surveyor and architect, well, engineer, have both said that they will give me the exact elevation that I need to sit the basement down into, so I avoid flood insurance. But as far as just having it, it's just a matter of whether I get flood insurance or not with the depth of it. So we've already built the property up fairly high, which was also suggested by Dana. Just go ahead and put more dirt on. You can, that's okay. But we'll build it out of the ground appropriate to the surrounding homes.
And all of that will be dealt with when the permit's issued. They'll discuss all of that and bring it up to the FEMA standards, and who knows, maybe that standard's changed.
Dana said if it does fall within the standards, there's two different overrides that you can do. You can submit a permit to amend the FEMA map that takes a long time, or there's a separate thing that she assumed that the substation had done, that literally you bring in more dirt and shoot new elevations and submit that, and FEMA okays that, and Dana and Matt okay that. So worst case scenario, we go that direction, but I think that we're going to avoid a headache altogether with a lot of that where it's sitting. Yep.
I had one other question, maybe for Ty or Gary. And it's probably just my short memory, but have we had a public hearing for this?
We need one. I'd say we don't need one.
Is one required?
So on a subdivision approval, the reason that a public hearing would be required is if you didn't have all the signatures of the individuals who own the property in the subdivision. If you didn't have all their signatures on the plat, then that would be a need. There'd be need for a public hearing. But if you've got all the signatures and all the individuals involved, you don't need to have a public hearing. You're not required to have a public hearing for subdivision. Does that make sense?
Oh, I see. Yeah, for the subdivision. And the fact that we're not changing the zoning at all
No.
is probably the big difference there.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's my discussion.
Okay, item number 2 is of improvements agreed between William J. Colville and Fern E. Colville as trustees of the Colville Family Trust dated November 6, 2019 in Morgan City, Resolution 2220. And we go to that. And what that deals with is future curb and gutter and sidewalk that they'll sign an agreement that if and when that ever happens, that they would pay their share of the. Yeah. Don't know if it'll happen. Might not in Chad's lifetime. I'm not
Tomorrow,
sure, but,
anyway.
yeah. Which there's a few of these I remember from years ago that have been on the
Yeah.
block, so.
I had to do a similar thing when I built my house, but they made me put money in a trust and I don't know where it went. So I'd rather have it this way.
Yeah, I think
this is clean.
this is much better.
Yeah. Like I say, I put money in a trust and who knows where it went.
Well, it was a summer party last year.
Probably. I don't know. So I think this was a pretty clean way to do it. So. Well, that's another part of it is too. It's like, I mean, just the price of everything's, how do you know what it's gonna be?
Right. 20 years later.
Yeah, or you don't even know, 60 days now.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. Both of these things are straightforward for me.
Chad, a question. The property's in a trust right now. Will that continue or is that deeded to you?
The parcel 2 in
Okay.
that will be deeded to me. The parcel 1 will remain in the trust. So,
The parcel one's your dad's home?
yep, currently my brother is living in that home, but it belongs to my dad.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So lot 2 remains in the trust or lot 1?
Lot 1 had the home on it, right?
Lot 2 does.
Oh. Okay, so lot 2 will remain in the trust and lot 1 will be deeded to me. Yep.
Okay.
So, I mean, that brings up a question, Gary. When does the recording take place of the agreement?
The agreement's recorded at the same time the subdivision's recorded.
Okay.
And then of course it travels with the land. So subsequent purchasers are on notice that this is the case. And as was indicated, there have been a number in the past. I can't remember specifically where they've been, but where we've had to go back and request that we have a contribution for curb gutter and sidewalk, or the sidewalk. It's principally the sidewalk is what it delays. And I believe that the underlying ground is already being dedicated. Just looking at the plat. So it's just a matter of having a contribution for those improvements that would be necessary in the future.
If the property changed hands before the recording of the agreement, is that a problem? Look, looks like you're busy for a minute.
I don't think it would be because it, right, he said it.
That's no problem. If it changes before the agreement should not, the agreement should be recorded at the same time the subdivision plat is being recorded, because they can't essentially build on that lot until a subdivision plat is actually recorded. So there's no chance that the agreement could be, that somebody could come in ahead of time and purchase the lot and not be subject to this agreement. Is that what you're asking, David?
Yeah, although, I mean, suppose Dad deeds the lot to Chad before the agreement's recorded, all of a sudden, is the agreement valid in that the trust is no longer the owner of the property? Should the
So the conveyance,
agreement be between the owner and the city?
the conveyance would then be invalid. You can't convey a lot that is not officially created by subdivision and by recording. So they really couldn't do that. If they did it, they wouldn't be able to build on it. We would deny the building permit if they did that.
Okay, so I mean, the point being, and just between you and your dad, wait until we record the subdivision before transferring it. It's okay, I guess that's what I was leading up to ultimately.
Sorry. I apologize.
I did have a question that Bill Colville is going to bring to the table at 7. He said the Island Road was still a right of way. And so, of course, it goes back and he's feeling like this curb and gutter thing he's not loving it, but it needs to happen. Is the Island Road an actual city street, or is it still just a right of way?
I would think it'd be a city street. I don't know how it'd be a right of way.
You got a comment, Ty?
Yeah, so the problem is it's still listed under the county ownership. Either way, it's a public street. So we'll have to see what when Gary gets back, what the difference between right of way, and either way, it's public property. So you record the easement or whatever's needed for future improvements. But if I remember right, that section of road still shows county ownership.
For how far?
To the corner, or where the bend in the road is.
Shouldn't present a problem, though, correct?
Not to the homeowner. I guess it depends on what the question is at
What we're
7, but you're always required to record an easement for all the utilities and future road needs.
All the way out. Really?
Learned something new tonight.
You live on a back road, Eric.
I tried to get them to start maintaining it, but that didn't work.
Right next to the substation. At some point, clean that up.
Yeah, somebody should.
Probably ought to get that to the city, huh, Ty?
When you say somebody, you mean me?
Somebody, assign it to somebody smart enough to do it.
I'll ride with you.
Tag along.
Yeah.
But
Where it hasn't posed any problems for us at this point, it's just it'll take some work and just have to have them deed us over the property. But maybe I better ask what the question is at 7 o'clock, or the any issue that we need to anticipate.
It was just the question itself. If it was just a right of way and the city didn't have actual ownership of that, why would curb and gutter be valid at any point? Knowing that it's not going to happen for a while, why would they be concerned with that?
Yeah. And either way, it's all public property, and to hit any of the requirements, we need the width for, otherwise we wouldn't have utilities, or the likelihood of curb, gutter, and sidewalk is really low on that side of the street. If we end up with sidewalk, the other side, just the amount of infill and foot traffic from the, I don't know my directions, maybe south side of the street is more likely than both sides of the street.
Sure.
But I think the road's also narrow already. I think it doesn't meet our typical 60-foot
All right, thank you.
width, but it just protects, at the point of developments, the time you require it, it protects future homeowners from takings. So we don't go say, well, we've got to widen the road now because of other development, and we got to take your front property. It just communicates that property's in the public interest now.
And that's the best way to do it, Mr. Mayor. The best way to do it is to make sure you get that up front, because the current code requires that a certain cross-section be dedicated to the city. And so whether or not the improvements are put in, we can delay those, but you don't have a chance of delaying the conveyance of that property into the future. You've got to do that at the time of subdivision. Does that make sense?
it does.
Chad, the 468, is that Dad's home?
The 470 is Dad's home. The 468 is a brother's renting from Dad's home.
So where will your home sit on that photo right there?
Whatever this weird little thing is. So approximately 25 feet between current home and my home.
Okay, and are those structures right now? Do they come down?
I'm pretty
Oh.
sure this was the substation.
They're on wheels then, huh? I mean, the concern was if it's a structure, even if just a shed, flood insurance may be a problem.
No, currently nothing residing on the property.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
That's all I have.
Okay. Move on to item 3, the final approval of the Rupp subdivision.
I report to Mayor that was considered at the Planning Commission meeting on Thursday. And after review from the engineer and seeing all of the significant items completed, the commission passed a favorable recommendation to the council for approval.
And really, I think there was just a couple minor things.
Seemed like there were one or two that would be taken care of along the way, along the process. I don't remember what they were.
And that was passed on with a
Favorably, yes.
favorable, positive recommendation.
A little bit of discussion of a well protection zone, and the lots that fall in that will have to have a few additional rules, I guess, that they pay attention to.
But I think they determined that wasn't a problem at this point.
Not for the subdivision,
Yeah.
as long as they.
Maybe future development.
Mayor, I have a question if you don't mind.
Oh,
So that hammerhead or turnaround on the outside of the subdivision, is there an agreement or something recorded with that?
That's a good question.
I don't know if that came up in the meeting.
Into that road. At the top of the
So-
map,
Yeah, at the top.
the very top there.
yeah.
I know they own the property next door, but that's technically outside of
Yeah, right. Now it's at the bottom.
it's outside of this subdivision.
Is that different ownership then?
No, same ownership, but the potential, I guess I'm thinking of is there's potential that the other property sells. And so without a recorded easement or something for that hammerhead, it should be contained inside of the subdivision.
Property.
Have you reviewed the punch list high? Is that part of the part of the engineer's recommendations?
I haven't read through it
Yeah.
thoroughly. So I've seen everything except for the this rendering with the turnaround on it. I remember when we talked in development meetings just about making sure that turnaround, I think, goes over the top of a ditch just to make sure it'll sustain weight, but this is kind of an afterthought. So I just,
No, that's a great thought. Is that something that we need to hold up on for the moment, or does it vet
Lisa, do you
itself in
know?
the process?
since Teresa's here, do you know if that was addressed?
Yeah, what I was just gonna run into the other office. I know that, we didn't talk about it in this particular, planning commission meeting, but Ben Russell had his, engineer, draft up, what an access easement or turnaround easement.
Okay,
To record when this happens. I don't know if Mr. Crane's looked at it yet, so I can look and see.
okay, but that was a point of discussion, right?
Yeah,
That would
was
be
in
an
our-
easement recorded.
and a couple of meetings ago, that was something that had to be done, and I'll have to look and make sure that document was done.
Okay,
And then they'll just record it at recording.
yeah, I have to apologize. I didn't prepare real well for the meeting, so.
Let's see, here's item number 7. Provide standard temporary turnaround facilities at the end of streets that exceed 150 feet and so forth. Any lot with a turnaround easement is to be plotted as an R lot, so that would mean the newer build, I guess. Include a note on the plat explaining that lot cannot be built on until the road is extended. Temporary easement is to be automatically moved and so forth. And it says complete, the configuration is not the city standard, but is acceptable to minimum impact to the farming operations on the adjacent property. Morgan County Fire also indicated that they approve it. Is there a question?
Yes. So to Ty's point, just what you read, David, it doesn't seem to address the property that is off the defined subdivision, such as the temporary turnaround that's identified at the bottom. So what Teresa says is going to happen, that is that they'll have to submit a separate document, a deed of easement. That would be a temporary easement for that T at the end of the roadway, because the plat itself does not dedicate that to the city because it's outside of the subdivision boundaries. So they would have to have a separate document to do that. That would have to be recorded at the same time the subdivision was recorded. So that
We don't know if this is new to the developer then.
sounds like it's not, if they've discussed it. Is that right, Teresa?
It sounds like they've discussed it with our engineer and planner. I think the recording of the easement might not have happened, so they're aware of the impact. I'm just saying the formality of recording an easement, I'm not sure has been handled. And so if we can move forward with it with the condition of an easement, you know,
Agreed.
for the
Property
temporary
owner.
turnaround.
Property owner that is actually sort of a future extension of that subdivision.
That's
But
that's the plan, but it's not, you can't restrict a lot. So like what David just said is if you had a temporary turnaround, it would be a restricted lot inside the subdivision, but everything we approve with the subdivision has to be contained within the subdivision.
Yeah, they've elected to not restrict the current subdivision lot, rather a future one, but nonetheless, that's a good point. It needs the approval of the person that owns the land, you know, albeit the same group, but it still needs the proper authority.
I usually look at those before they actually record them, so I appreciate that, Teresa, if we could.
And to be honest with you, this is the first I've heard of this.
So
Uh,
that's at the end of which street, Teresa?
Okay, so what happens is they have to have a temporary turnaround due to the length of this portion here. And it was not in last week's meeting, but a couple of meetings ago, we discussed this, and I know that Ben Russell had gone ahead and done a document with approval, but it was just a draft. And I'm just looking to see where it is, because I know we took care of it.
So they did the survey work. Did they have a description for it?
Yeah, there's a description, survey work, and then it was prepared with the signatures. And I know I
Okay.
have it somewhere in my file, somewhere.
Yeah. No, this is a much better option, you know, than restricting one of those lots, because it just goes away and the street continues. It's just making sure it gets recorded. That's.
Right way.
Mhm.
So if that's recorded and handled that way, it shouldn't impair the approval of the subdivision, right?
Well, and, you know, I didn't finish it, but the very last line says alternatively, easements may be obtained from adjoining property. So I guess the engineer did recognize it. And he's also saying it's complete.
Back to my previous comment, it shouldn't affect the approval of the subdivision, or do we need to make that a contingency? That hammerhead is recorded, or
I think it could be contingent with that.
that sound okay, Gary?
Yes, it does.
That acknowledges it and that brings it to the front burner, I think.
Mayor, could I make one more recommendation? I just happened to notice this on the plat, but down where they have utility companies, they probably ought to include Utopia, since Utopia is the main provider in Layton or in Morgan City. They've got all the cable companies, but they've not got a signature line for Utopia.
That on number 5?
It's at the very bottom of the plat where it says utility companies. It's in the box at the very bottom.
Right there.
So all you do is just add another line specifically for that.
Utopia?
Mhm. Utopia Fiber.
We could make that part of the recommendation also.
Yeah.
Sure.
Ty, just wanted to hear your thoughts on the detention basin. And there was some discussion, I guess, earlier between or concerning the ownership. It said ownership of the basin is assumed to be private. Long-term maintenance agreement will need to be completed by the developer HOA. This is to be recorded with the plat. Do we have a preference, or does the city have a preference on ownership? Do we prefer one over the other?
Yeah, I would say we prefer that they own it and handle it themselves unless it's to a size that we can have a secondary use. So Field Street Park is essentially a detention pond, but it's large enough to have ball games and, park space.
That can be
Because it's
into the agreement, I suppose.
And so we own it, right? So they designed it, we took ownership of it, and in that sense, it makes much more sense than for us to go buy enough property for a park. But when it's this little and deep, it's better that they maintain it.
So Gary, or even Ty, for the long term, when they're owned by the HOAs, do those work out, or do cities ultimately end up with ownership before it's over?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
It's a trick question.
No, that's a good question. Because if you've got an operating, first of all, if the HOA is properly set up, you've got the CC&Rs that establish it, and you require that the HOA actually be set up, at the time of filing of the plat. You generally are not going to have too much of a problem with getting the homeowners association involved in caring for it. And I have often put in the CC&Rs a provision that indicates that if the HOA fails to do that, that the city could step in and take care of the detention basin and bill each of the property owners on their utility bill for it. I mean, it's just one thought, one way of handling it. But for the most part, people are pretty responsible. They don't like a weed patch sitting right next to them, and so they do take care of it. But there are ways that we can make sure that it is taken care of. Does that make sense? Or?
Yeah, at the same time, I'm not sure we want to be the enforcer. Maybe we are anyway, but to lien people's property makes us the bad guy when it's the HOA that's not doing their job.
Right. Yeah, that's only a last resort.
You
make it clear that if the thing becomes a fire hazard or nobody's taking care of it.
Yes, safety or otherwise.
It's also a pretty good, little bit of a urge or push to making sure you have a functioning HOA within a subdivision if it's needed. So, but anyway, we can look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we've had pretty good luck. We've had some that we have had to tell them, you got to clean this out. It's not functioning properly. Lance does a really good job. So if we're proactive, it doesn't really become an issue, because the overflow, or it essentially will go into our storm, sump or whatever the street, I guess, however it's designed. And so There's back and forth. The biggest problem is if there's not clarity. So if you don't know and nobody's maintaining it, and then you have a problem and you both, show up to some detention pond where you're like, well, whose is it? You got to go do the homework on it. Then it's a failure on everybody's part. But so far, our Lance is pretty up on our
So
whole
on a-
system and our whole city. We're still small enough that nothing seems to get by us.
Okay.
So on an HOA, who's, is the president the one that's responsible for it? Or how does that work as far as putting a fire under somebody to get it cleaned up or take care of a problem?
Yeah, typically the HOA has a president and a secretary and a treasurer. And it has a board of whatever size the HOA regulations say that it needs to be, and they enforce the rules within a subdivision. But yeah, usually the president is the one that takes responsibility for pushing an issue like that. And like Ty says, most of the time it gets taken care of. So
Is the property deeded to the HOA typically?
yes,
Have you ever seen a case where the developer didn't do that?
yes. A very sad story in Layton where the developer failed to do it, and the city's
that
still
could be-
trying to figure out how they're going to get them to take care of it. But typically, it's common area for the subdivision, so it can be sold off. It belongs to the HOA, and the HOA cares for it. And I haven't looked at the plat yet, the final plat, but there's usually a note on there indicating the HOA's responsibility for the detention basin. I think there probably is on this one, just looking through. And then the second thing is that there's, just looking, there's usually a provision. A couple of years ago, there was a brand new state law that said, typically on a subdivision plat, property can only be conveyed from a private, the subdivider, to a municipality. So, everything you see, all the dedications and everything you see, the easements, the PUEs, the roads, that type of thing, can all be conveyed by plat. It's one of the few things that you don't need a separate deed to convey all of that property to a city. When you actually, once you file a plat, that's the case, is it now belongs to the city. They actually allowed, a couple of years ago, they allowed you to put on the plat a conveyance of something like this, a detention basin, to an HOA. So in other words, it actually conveys the property to the HOA just by a notation on the plat and the signature of the developer.
So perhaps that would be in order here.
Yeah, it would work.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, not that you expect any trouble, but like you say, if there may be well to avoid any also.
Hey, Gary, this is Teresa. I have a question. Do they have to have an HOA?
If there is common area, they really should have an HOA to take care of it.
The only reason I-
Unless you make it part of the abutting lot, and I've seen that happen before, where they make it part of an abutting lot, and then that person takes care of the detention basin. They've got one in Kaysville. If you ever go to up 200 South in Kaysville, there's this guy with a detention basin in his backyard. And we actually have one in Morgan, and it was a source of major contention a couple of years ago before Ty got here, with a family that had a detention basin in their backyard. So that doesn't work very well. It's better if it's a separate parcel of property and it is conveyed to the HOA.
The only reason why I asked that question, because in previous meetings, he had indicated he wasn't planning an HOA and was assuming or hoping the city would take over the detention pond. That might be something, we told him that during our planning commission, we don't make those choices. That's the city council. So I think that'll be brought up.
They don't get along real well.
You know, where the streets are dedicated to the city, why wouldn't the pond be? I mean, that seems odd that they would just keep that separated out from everything else. I can appreciate if the HOA, plowed their own roads and maintained their own streets and so forth, but here they're coming together just for the maintenance of a pond. Does that? Wouldn't it would seem to me it'd be easier for them to say if the city will accept it, that's part of their business. We'll let them run with it. I guess the question is, why do they want to keep it?
Well, because it's a easier solution than putting storm or sumps into the road. So the city typically will own the pipes. And you build kind of a storm drain system, but because we don't have a storm drain system in this area, when someone develops, it's their requirement to contain their runoff. And so, depending on which area of the city, that's just usually one of the, I think it's the least expensive, easiest.
So least expensive.
And easy. Yeah, right. And so then they just designed the subdivision to all kind of end up in that spot. And that's because we have a lack of a citywide storm drain system. If we had a full storm drain system, we would also have a storm drain utility. We would charge a utility fee. So every resident would essentially be paying.
Participate, yeah.
For the whole thing. And so, so it goes either way. It's a lot easier for us to maintain a storm drain system, meaning pipes and all that, than a open basin like this. But so I haven't been in those discussions either. It seems like when I was reading through the notes, we required that we had access to the gate for the storm drain, and in case we needed to do something, because I think it's going to have to be fenced.
I think it was deep enough to be fenced, correct?
Yeah, and I think in the notes, I think we just said we want to make sure we have keys to that gate, but I don't know that ownership was ever.
My eyes are old. Where's the pond going? The retention pond, what lot?
Right inside.
Right there, okay.
So typically, the city would have an easement over a storm drain basin like that too, so it can't ever be sold. For some reason, a bunch of the property owners got together and said, well, we want to sell this as a lot, or they sell it to somebody as a lot. That can't happen. So there's usually an easement for the city over the lot too. Those are usually things that we check at final plat. So
runs with the land at that point. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen
so
that. The backyard's been a retention pond.
So we are still dealing with that one, Gary, that happened before I got here.
sorry.
We've moved a power pole, and now we're paying a company to come reshape it because it's not to the design standard. We're just gonna fix it up and be done. Anyway, it's that sort of thing that we like to avoid, like you said.
I mean,
but on the engineer's notes on 6, it said that the ownership of the detention basin should be discussed. Private ownership is assumed.
he also said it's complete.
Well, yeah, with a note right after that. So,
Were these obstacles to give the final approval?
well, I think we just make a decision and make it contingent on whatever those decisions are. So it's not, I think maybe I wasn't at the meeting, but maybe they just said it's maybe a city council decision on ownership. And I, again, apologize for not being more up to
Do
speed
you
on
remember, Dave, what
the
was
discussions.
said on that?
So
I
at
don't
the,
remember a lot of discussion.
yeah, so what it was at the planning commission was that engineer had everything written off except for the decision of ownership of the detention pond would be discussed at the city council level. And that's it. We didn't make any recommendation or not. Just the applicant had indicated he was not planning on an HOA, as that these are just custom individual homes. And the roads would be dedicated, so to have an HOA would be something he wasn't gonna desire.
So if that's the discussion, I don't have a problem having the city own it.
You know,
If there's not going to be an entity to work with, we're going to end up owning it in the long run. We might as well take it from the beginning. And
I'm just looking at my notes too, Ty. I got here, city council will decide the storm basin ownership. So maybe, I guess that's been sent to us to decide.
yeah,
Yeah, but
sounds
we
like it.
talked about it. I'd forgotten that. Good. Take a note.
It's not going to be a huge issue. It sounds like it's not that I'm excited about maintaining more, but this will be a small one and so steep, it's not going to be like a weekly mowing activity with a tractor. It'll probably just be weeds and silt, you know.
So you're suggesting that we take it on? Okay.
Yeah. And just because I hadn't been included, if they were intending on an HOA, then we let them do it. If it's private ownership without an HOA, it'll just be a disaster to, you know.
That would be their only reason to do an HOA is that detention pond, correct?
Yeah, they don't have any other common.
Right. It just seemed odd to have that singled out as small of an item as it is. Then with the city ownership, we can have a little bit of say in how it's put together, it sounds like, as far as, so it meets standards that we would expect.
Yeah, the engineers already, you know, the design of it's going to be the same. It's just, you know, how we deal with weeds, and it'll all be fenced in. So I think it'll just be probably rock walls or
Does the
gravel
city
walls.
flip the fence bill or is it
No.
developer or?
No, they install everything, just hand ownership to us.
Okay.
So just a side note, when we had the issue of the detention pond in somebody's backyard, we had redid the city standards. And part of that is required to have the engineer review and approve that detention pond. We no longer allow just to have weeds. It does have to be finished in a manner that would be pleasing. So you can, you know, like, and it does get specific for how deep it has to have a fencing. We can require grass, but it has to be approved during the construction drawing portion.
Yeah, so we'll follow through on that just to make sure it's installed so correctly.
So I guess, Ty, I mean, to look at the big picture, we take it on, that means more work, more expense for us. And so then I have to ask, well, what do we get in exchange? Well, we get a park. At that point, the area, albeit small, is available to everyone in the city. It's not just exclusive to the.
Yeah, this one won't be any park space. It's too small. It'll be fenced in.
Lynn,
So I'm just saying that's one of the reasons why we sometimes entertain the notion of ownership. But this will be minimal, like just, if it was a storm drain system, would be maintaining it anyway. It's just not there's just
Yeah.
no utility fee associated with that.
Like-
It just
okay,
becomes part of
so, I mean,
streets.
More, again, there's more expense or more work for us, but the benefit to us would be that we have control over it.
Make sure it functions properly, correct?
Mhm.
Is it possible to have them put a little cement under the fence, so no strip?
Make it easy for you.
So if the city has to maintain it, we aren't fighting a bunch of grass underneath the chain link fence.
Yeah, I don't know what our standard is. We'll just refer back to our standard.
We can just make that a contingency.
Well,
You
It's
want
gotta
to,
have a most.
I want them to take that out.
well, it needs to meet the standard, so we're not in conflict.
yeah. And like Teresa said, I think it sounds like we have a standard for that. So we'll just follow it and then go from there. So, and once we own it, we can do whatever we want to make it easier to maintain.
So I end up then with three, I'm going to call them conditions for lack of a better word, for acceptance. One would be adding the line for the utility Utopia. A second would be an easement agreement for the Hammerhead turnaround with the current property owner. And then a third would be city ownership of the storm basin. Okay,
That
sounds good. Good discussion.
Okay, Gary, we haven't left you any training time. As usual.
I'm thinking maybe I should write it up and just hand it out to you and maybe.
I mean, that'd be great if that's doable, but that's extra work for you.
Well, we need to do something like that. We could do something quickly like that. So
Okay,
Well,
well,
if Jeff was a little more quiet, we wouldn't spend so much time.
No kidding.
Maybe just instead of calling it training, lesson learned from the last meeting.
Yeah.
What's the one thing we did wrong last meeting?
There's our training, right?
the one thing,
Yeah. only
Hey,
one.
we just take one at a time there, Mayor.
well, the
So-
interesting thing is that just by going through the plat the way that we did and talking about HOAs and talking about easements and talking about turnarounds, those are all things that are new and they're all training is what they are. So,
Yeah.
I don't feel shorted. Let me put it that way.
okay,
We have learned, we have been trained.
Yeah,
On the job training.
Yeah.
that's it. That's a good way to put it, Mayor.
well, we appreciate everybody's input, and if there's no discussion, we'll adjourn this work meeting.
The RPO stuff, is that on
Well, that's on.
The regular
the
agenda.
regular agenda?
Yeah.
Okay,
City manager business.
okay.
Is that gonna require some kind of action? Ty?
It's in agreement.
No. So the mayor just signed it. I'm just updating everybody that we're a party to the
We're part of.
RPO.
we're-
The old one went away. They created a new one that's just us in the county. So,
Okay.
but there's no,
Step towards unity.
yep, and no money was obligated in that agreement. So that now there's nothing left to say on my update.
We shortened up the update.
Yeah, exactly. I just threw in the money part. I could have left one thing left to talk about, but we can just check that one off unless you have questions when we get there.
Okay, with that, we'll adjourn the work meeting and take a 5-minute break.
Perfect.
All
side that aren't part of it. They're currently draining on my property, so they have a storm drain set up through my property. So
Who does?
there's a 24-inch pipe that runs through the piece that we're subdividing that this.
Oh, is that the one where Thurston gave you permission?
That's his irrigation.
That's the ditch.
So the concern is, the city does end up taking on that catch basin and then decides to route it to the storm.
The storm drain.
It's there. Now we're venting 32 properties instead of just that.
So you have the drain running through your property to the river?
And it didn't go all the way to the river when they had done it 5 years ago. They only ran it to the bank. And now there's a nice piece of property down there that the water drains, 8 houses drains onto it. So it ends up being 32 houses draining onto it. It's gonna be a big mud hole down there. So my concern would be later on, if that ends up happening, so all the water doesn't end up going to that catch basin, it ends up tapping into that storm because the city takes it on.
Problem with that is I think, yeah, I don't think we can drain storm.
Oh,
No, not any.
even better, get rid of that.
The storm drain on 700 East runs into the ditch by my house and then to the river.
And if they don't have access to something like that, that's why they'll have all this retaining offside. But it
Oh,
We're good? Yeah.
Give this a smack. We'd like to welcome those that are with us for the Morgan City Council, May 24th, 2022. Appreciate those that have come, and we also appreciate those that are joining us on Zoom or maybe YouTube, whatever it's called.
Are they on right now? Okay, here they come. I guess they don't look the same as they did on our
I
last
see
meeting.
Ty, maybe Gary's not quite with us.
Gary's just got his camera off.
Yeah.
There he
There we
is.
go.
Hello,
There we
Gary.
go.
Well, as we usually start out by informing those that join us, the council always has a work meeting prior to this meeting so that we can go over the agenda items and have some discussion. So we just want all to know that the council takes this seriously, and if there's things to work through, that's what that work meeting's all about, which we did today, as we do all meetings. So we'll move in and welcome everybody. And let's see, I've asked Jeffrey if you'd do the pledge, and Eric, if you would do a prayer.
You betcha.
Everyone, please rise. And repeat the pledge. Oh, I guess they can just do it without, we used to put a flag on when we did it.
We got it.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we come before thee at this time. We're thankful for the blessings that we have. We're thankful for this beautiful valley that we reside in. We're thankful for the opportunity that we have to represent the people. We're thankful for this great country, and we pray that thou wilt be with us. Please bless us tonight as we make decisions, that we'll be able to make those that are pertinent, and that we'll be able to use our best judgment, and have thy spirit to be with us as we make those decisions. And we're indeed grateful for all those who serve and protect our country, for the first responders, and we pray for them and their well-being. And we love thee and say, sing in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. We don't have any minutes to approve at this meeting, but we will. Oh, yeah, that's right. Should have learned that from last time. Is there any discussion on the agenda for tonight? Or can we approve that?
Mayor, I'll move to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Teresa, it's unanimous. Let's go right into the warrants. Hi, is your ears working?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Anybody have any discussion on them, on the warrants?
Mayor, I've reviewed the warrants and would move to approve the warrants dated 5/6/22 to 5/20/22.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion from Dave to approve the warrants 5/6/22 to 5/20/22, and a second by Jeffrey. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Teresa, that was unanimous. All right, let's move. We got anybody, Teresa, on for public comments?
Maybe we come in.
No public comments here at this point. Okay. All right, let's go to agenda item A. Final approval of the Colville Riverbend subdivision. I like that name. Sounds good. Is there any discussion? As we say, we've talked about this in the work meeting. And I think we're prepared to move this along.
Yeah, I mentioned, we talked about a little bit about flood insurance. Chad answered some of our questions. Reported that it comes to the council with a favorable consideration from the planning commission.
Just wondering, I guess I can't go with A and B at the same time, can I?
Nope.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, now, we don't have any contingencies or anything that we thought of in the work meeting that we need to put into the motion?
Mayor, I have a question if you don't mind. This
Okay,
this is a kind of an afterthought, but when we did that substation, did we end up putting a guy wire or anything on the applicant's property? Or were we able to avoid that? There's,
Bill, you're saying there's nothing coming off the subdivision
off the substation?
station? Yeah, the substation.
Okay. Oh, perfect. It doesn't have anything to do with approval, so I just couldn't remember if that was a point of discussion when we were building the substation. I just want to make sure we didn't need to plan to move something or record easement or something on it. So that's good. Thank you.
I understand that when you get the permit, then all of the flood and all of that kind of stuff is spoken at that meeting. And your engineer and also has been over that with you, and you're aware of those things?
Yeah, when we approach for building permits, we'll have the depth of how far down we can go before hitting floodplain, whatever year floodplain, so we avoid flood insurance. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but yeah, that elevation will be appropriate.
Perfect.
Okay.
More discussion? Anybody got a
Yeah,
motion?
I'd move to approve or grant final approval to the Colville Riverbend subdivision, which consists of 2 lots.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the Colville Riverbend subdivision, 2 lots. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that part of it's done. Now let's move to B. That's a postponement of improvements agreement between William J. Colville and Fern E. Colville as trustees of the Colville Family Trust dated November 6, 2019 in Morgan City, Resolution 2220. Is there any discussion on that? Colvilles are aware of what's going on there.
I have a question. Why is that necessary?
This is where Ty comes in.
Yeah.
Or Gary.
Gary,
Gary or Ty?
Principally because there's an ordinance that requires in every single subdivision that curb, gutter, sidewalk be placed in front of any new in the subdivision. Wherever the subdivision is abutting a public street, it is required to be put in. So you've got an ordinance on the one hand that says you got to put it in. And then on the other hand, the city realizes that there's no connection on either side of that. And so the way to solve that problem, or the dilemma between the two, is to do a delay agreement. And these are not uncommon because there are many instances where you don't have sidewalk on either side. And it's kind of called leapfrog development, or development ahead of improvements. And so the way that you solve it is you go ahead and put together, a lot of places they call them lien waivers. Some places they call them delay or postponement agreements. And you record that against the property, and it travels with the deed to the land. And if in the future, either a PRUD, not a PRUD, but a SID is created, maybe an SID where everybody participates in putting sidewalk up and down that street, or if the city decides to do it, they can come back to the property owner and say, back at the time you got your subdivision approval, you committed to pay your proportional share of what it costs to put that sidewalk in. And so now's the time. And so it's a dilemma between what is required by the ordinance, and it solves that dilemma by putting in play a delay agreement for it so that you don't have to go to the expense today.
Okay, another question. What would be our proportional share? Any percentage? 10%?
If you calculate, Mayor, is it okay for me to just answer?
Yes.
Okay. So if you calculate, all you would be responsible for is whatever the cost of the sidewalk was in front of the homes in the subdivision. So if there's 100 feet of sidewalk, you'd be responsible for just that 100 feet of sidewalk, nothing outside of your subdivision, just exactly what is in the subdivision. And I could not tell you even today what the cost of a foot of sidewalk costs anymore, because it almost changes like the stock market, and something different every single day. But whatever the cost of that improvement is what you would have to be responsible for. That would be your proportional share, just for your lots.
Doesn't consist of the curb, correct?
There's no curb and gutter there either, is there?
No.
So it would be the curb and gutter as well.
As well.
As well as the sidewalk.
So maybe Bill, to help understand, in any subdivision, the entity developing is responsible for all improvements. In other words, all of those costs, including roads, sidewalks, utilities, are borne by the lot owners that are going to purchase the property there. So the good news is you only have one, it's a 2-lot subdivision, but you only have one section you have to worry about. After the work has been done, then it's dedicated to the city, and the city provides maintenance like they do with roads and utilities and everything else. But at that point, then the rest of the community, if you think about it, isn't paying for your sidewalk or your street or your, water to your place. It's you pay for that as the developer. Hence, let's pass on. I would picture the price of Chad's lot just going up a little bit. In other words, if Bill has to pay for it, that's what the developer does. He passes that along to the property owner, to the new purchaser.
I believe that I can remember in past times that there was, and I think Eric's experienced this, where he's had to put money in a trust in case this ever comes about, which we were discussing about what happened to that trust that he put in there all that time ago. There's no real, but yet it was cash out of his pocket kind of thing, where this is just in case it ever does happen.
Okay,
Which is probably slim to none.
okay.
I mean,
That was my next question.
I can't
I-
see much development going on your side of the road.
Okay.
So, but you can't say that the mayor said there'll never be a sidewalk there or a curb and gutter.
but what's the chances of that?
Yeah. But even I think it's better than a trust.
Oh,
Where
it is.
you lay money
I
out
agree with
now and.
Yeah, it's better than a trust.
Yeah, I think it is. It makes more sense to me.
Did you have to do it when you subdivided? And so did Sterling on the corner?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because there's nothing down there. That was my big argument. What do I tie to? Where do you want me to run the sidewalk? And you can't say that because there's nothing there, right? So, and I mean,
Yeah.
it just makes sense.
So I think this is a more,
When I did it, I had to put a trust in,
yeah,
money in a trust, but
An escrow.
like I said, or escrow, but where's that money at?
Okay.
And chances of this happening are slim to probably none. I mean, I'm with the mayor saying I can't see the future, but chances are on, especially your side of their street,
Well, it would be a huge project.
it would be, I mean, there's utilities and the ditch and all kinds of stuff down through there that would be a nightmare to deal with.
Right.
So you're doing it when everybody else is. Have you seen the agreement yet? Yeah, and it's very specific. It spells out when that event happens. The good news again for you is it's not just at the whim of the city. It's specific events have to happen in order to trigger your portion, right?
Okay. I'm comfortable with that now.
okay.
I did notice something in this resolution though. I was getting ready to do it but the dates in there are, it's post dated November the 6th, 2019.
Well, that's the date of the Colville.
Was that the date when that was,
That's not the agreement. That's when they put their land.
when
in
they
the
put
trust.
that land in the trust?
In their trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just like, wait a minute, is this post dated? But I got it.
Yeah, that was their
Okay.
And it's been a
transfer of
long haul
ownership.
coming, really. It's been a long haul for you.
It has.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, may I have just one additional comment, if you don't mind?
Sure.
It was kind of alluded to, but also the proportion means that the city fronts, if it's a city project, that we have put the project out to bid and got the pricing, and then you build your portion on government pricing. And so it actually costs less than if you were gonna go do curb gutter sidewalk on your own, or have like Ben Russell do it. I'm just teasing Ben since he's sitting right there. But anyway, that's what proportion means. It's a larger project, and then it doesn't include the startup costs and all of the other things. It's just strictly the install and material cost for that section. And
So Chad, there's a negotiating point for you when you're talking to Dad about the purchase price.
And this also maybe not be relevant, but I just want to mention I'm comfortable with the delayed agreement with the Colvilles because they've been really good neighbors to work with when we built that substation. Very accommodating. It's not always easy to have a city project on the, right next to you, and I think we even use their land for some dirt and access and stuff like that. So just really wanted to mention that I appreciate them working with us so well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So not only do you get probable never gonna happen, if it does happen, you'll get the government price. So that can, yeah, that's true. It's generally less than what Ben has to come up with. Okay. Any more discussion? Anybody ready for a motion?
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the postponement of improvements agreement between Morgan City and Chad Colville and resolution
It's
2220. William,
And Fern.
I was looking
They
at
did the new one.
back agenda. Okay, with the William and Fern. I'm on the wrong one. Okay,
Sorry to interrupt you.
no, you're good. So I'll make that
Did you get
motion.
finished?
Yep.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
We need to roll call a resolution.
I don't think so. I think we learned we don't need to, right, Gary?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Good.
It's, if there's an expenditure of funds, you would have to do a roll call, so.
That'll be on the not so likely to happen resolution. wouldn't it? Okay, Teresa. Unanimous. Okay. As we talked to Chad, you've been successful, and if you want to stay, you can. If you don't, you're more than welcome to. Thanks for coming. Okay, agenda item 3, the final approval of the Rupp subdivision. That statement's been a long time coming.
Sounds pretty good to me.
We've talked about this also in the work meeting, and there's a couple little notations that we have. Is anybody prepared to?
Yeah, I could
Dave, you got
talk
'em?
about them.
Or
Yeah,
you want to ask him some questions?
yeah, I think,
I think
yeah,
it'll
we'll have
come
a,
out with-
let's have a discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of it's straightforward, Ben, but it was recommended that we add an additional line on the subdivision for utility utopia, that they sign off on it, as well as your other,
On the plat,
on the plat, I'm sorry, yeah, as well as your other utilities.
yeah, I'm surprised it's not on there, but.
Yeah,
it-
yeah.
But yeah, I
We,
absolutely, that makes sense.
yeah, we noticed it.
Yeah.
Second item was, it looks like we'll probably need an easement agreement on the hammerhead at the end of the street, because that property is outside of the subdivision.
Right.
So, but yeah, it should be easy to get.
We've got the agreement.
Okay,
It's been signed. It hasn't been recorded.
okay,
We didn't record it until it became a project.
okay.
And so if it's approved, we just didn't want to have a recorded easement if there
If
was,
you didn't need it.
if there
yeah,
wasn't a project.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But
That's good to know. We didn't know that part
Yeah.
of it, but it'll happen concurrently then with the.
yeah, it's all drawn up, just ready to be recorded. So
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the big discussion was the ownership of, that we spent probably 30 minutes on, ownership of the storm basin. And right at the moment, but we'll, with you here, we can certainly get your input. We're would probably consider taking ownership, maintaining it. And it seemed to make sense in several accounts. It appeared that a homeowners association would come together just if the homeowners were to own it just for that single purpose, which seemed to, I'm not sure why you would want to do that unless there was some significant cost savings or something. But everything else being equal, we would probably, the requirements for fencing and everything else would still be maintained, but that way we could monitor it. We could make sure it's functioning and working the way that it needs to. And you'll remember in the Planning Commission, they sent the recommendation to the council with that in mind, that we determine the ownership.
Right.
How does that fit with your plans?
to me, that makes the most sense.
Okay.
I mean, ultimately, we would do whatever you decided. But if I'm just looking at it from a practical and a logical perspective, I think it makes sense that the city would take ownership of that.
Mhm.
But
I
if you
think-
felt strongly, in
Yeah.
another way, I guess we
Yeah.
could have that discussion, but.
I mean, if, in my mind, if there was a homeowners association that was maintaining streets, other activities, and this was just maybe a subset of a larger function, it may make sense, but to have this be, unless there's some other reason that you have a homeowners association come together, it seemed a little bit minimal to me.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. So.
Those were the three items I had. Did I miss anything?
I think you pretty much summed it up.
That's what we discussed earlier.
I just had a wish list.
Yeah.
Shoot, yeah. So does everybody.
Tell the city attorney to turn
Nice.
his sound off.
Yeah.
It'd be nice on the city to have lot 20 along with the detention so we can have a park
This is where it gets in trouble.
Gary's starting to sweat.
Yeah, close your ears, Gary.
I'd also add, Ben, that I appreciate, and I think we all do, the work that you've done to read the engineer's report, and it was fairly, pretty good sized punch list.
Yeah.
But to come back and say everything was complete with just a couple of minor exceptions, says there's a lot of work on your end.
Yeah.
And so it's so recognized, but it sure makes our job and just getting along easier. So thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, it does take a lot of work to kind of get there, but I think at the end of it, it's the
pays
right way to
dividends.
do it.
Yeah, it does.
And
Yep,
so,
good point.
yeah, no, I appreciate your acknowledging that. Oh, thank you.
And I'd like to also mention that it's falling into the hands of responsible, good contractors.
Yeah. We'll live up to that. Or-
I know you will. Okay, is there any more discussion?
Mayor, I would propose a motion approving or granting final approval of the Rupp subdivision with three conditions. One, we add to the plat, the utility Utopia, asking them to concur with the subdivision. We'd expect a recording of an easement agreement with the current property owner on the Hammerhead turnabout at the end of the street, or at the end of any streets that aren't included in the subdivision. And the question of the ownership of the storm basin would be granted to the city ownership.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion to give final approval to the Rupp subdivision. Second by Jeffrey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous, Teresa. So thanks for your work, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. No,
Excited to see the project.
me too.
Have you
Appreciate it.
had any trouble with interest in the lots?
Well, that's the only thing we haven't had trouble with, so.
Fair
Pipe, concrete, everything else.
Yeah,
but-
the others, all of this stuff's just minor, isn't it?
Well, yeah,
Yeah, holy
but
smokes.
materials right now are, as you're familiar with, that's the biggest obstacle is getting materials, but we'll get them eventually and stuff.
Do
But,
you have an approximate start date, Ben?
well, and
I
again,
know how that
yeah,
is.
it's
I know
all subject
kind of
to
huge.
materials. We'd like to get started this fall, and see what we could get done then, but the lead times on some of this pipe and stuff is
The pipe.
out there. And there's every kind of pipe under the, you got C900, you got RCP, you got HDPE, you got, what else have we got in? I mean, we've got every variety there is. So that's the goal, but it could get pushed to spring too. We're not gonna work through a winter where we're having to fight frost and haul in engineered fill to, replace ground that's full of frost and stuff like that. If we worked in the fall, it would just be until we got froze out, and so a lot of it will be weather dependent and then material dependent on when we can get what we need and stuff. Some stuff we've got coming, but some that we thought there still might be some fungibility to the design or whatever, we just didn't move forward with just for obvious reasons. And so they'll be somewhere around there. It's not a big project though. It shouldn't take, it shouldn't take real long to do it once we kind of get rolling. So.
Be pretty straightforward, it appears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Flat, the
it's-
ground's flat.
Yeah. As far as things go, I mean, it's really straightforward, so there'll be a little work, with, a couple items, but nothing too complicated. So,
Comment on the R lots. Weren't there some restricted lots?
yeah, that has to do with so there's that city well that's
Okay.
across the street there. And
Mhm.
so there's well protection zones, depending on the distance you are from the city well. And so those lots that are our lots fall within the well protection zone 2.
Okay.
And so there's certain restrictions that I think it's the State Division of Water Quality, have for lots that fall within that, and they're like, I think one of them is, you know, if you have fertilizer, you have to keep it in a container, and you know, they're relatively minor, but it's that type of thing. You couldn't have a dry cleaner in a well protection zone 2. You couldn't have a Jiffy Lube within a well protection zone 2. The sewer pipe had to be, instead of C900, it had to be HDPE pipe, which is that fusible, where it's friction and heat fused type of pipe.
It's separating.
Yeah, so there's a few things like that.
Pet ownership, is any restrictions there?
As that the well protection zone would.
Right, yeah, just in the R lots.
There's not that I'm familiar
Okay.
with, like a dog or a cat or
Right,
something like
right.
that.
But-
Not that I'm
Okay.
aware of.
Chickens,
Not that
Yeah.
I'm,
not any more
I
than
think
our.
roosters, yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna definitely put a covenant on that, but. But not that but I don't have, I wouldn't know that verbatim though either. It's kind of one of those state documents that is, you know, you got to have a full belly of Mountain Dew to get through it, so.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
You bet.
Thanks, Ben.
Good night.
You still with us, Ty?
Yep.
Okay, we're ready for you to shine.
Oh, goodness. The sun's already gone down. I could just. Hey, that's shiny.
It's a great backdrop.
Easier than I thought it was.
A lot of work backdrop.
Yeah.
Yeah, no sun required. So just a couple things that aren't on the list. One is we did get the approval for that historic district designation. If you remember, Rachel Turk came and presented, and so that went through state. Now we got the approval, so we have a recognized historic district. So there's some opportunity there for historic homeowners and businesses.
That was the one that Rachel was working on? Oh, good. It was
Yep,
a
so-
federal designation, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember her talking and explaining a little bit about it.
Yeah, so just appreciate her efforts. It's just one more tool in our toolbox for people that want to restore and.
Is
maintain
that
those properties.
indefinite, the approval?
I don't know terms, but I think once it's designated, it remains. So,
Mhm. Okay, good.
then our public works crew completed a confined space rescue training. We do that every couple of years. So it was 6 or 8 hours training where they get instruction, and then just for their safety. And then we pull out our gear and test it. It's something that we don't typically use. We have a confined space trailer, that has air supply and those sort of things when they go down into a confined space situation. So just want to congratulate them.
A little bit.
We're going to turn the volume up just a bit, Ty.
So when I cough, it's louder.
Sounds better.
Ah.
Sorry. Maybe I should just ask for like a talk louder. Then we just talked about the interlocal agreement for the RPO. That's something that the county reestablished. We're a party to it. The county is paying the bill to Wasatch Front Regional Council to host that. So that's where we got our regional transportation plan from last year. It used to be combined with Weber County, and now it's just Morgan County and Morgan City. So we're hopeful that they'll have some meetings and we can talk about our transportation plans in the future and our needs, and stay on the same page about who's doing what. So
Just a couple of questions.
Okay.
It's loud. It looked like the county had signed their part back in August. Why would ours be delayed as long as it has?
It just, nobody told us about it. So, Wasatch Front Regional Council also didn't sign it until April.
Okay.
It's one of those things when, we just asked when the meetings are, or what we're doing with it. And then they told us they changed the structure of it and got us a new agreement. So.
Okay. Is this our, when I say our, the county and the city's desire to work together for transportation, or does Wasatch Regional, do they drive some of what this is about?
It's both. Wasatch Front Regional. So what it is Wasatch Front Regional Council is a metropolitan planning organization. So it's an MPO. We're not a part of that because it's restricted to the I-15 corridor. So Wasatch Front Regional Council gets direct funding in order to take care of a lot of those activities. So if we apply for funding or we're in the pipeline applying to UDOT directly, like we have to, there's just sometimes when they say, is this project part of a regional plan? And that's what an RPO does, is it establishes a regional transportation plan. And it also includes prioritizing projects so that you can say, and this is where it ranks on the list. Right. And so
May give it some enhanced priority.
yeah. So there's value in attending the meetings, just on the planning side, just, hey, this is the projects we have going on. This is where we say safety issues. Here's, just between the two entities, future growth patterns, types of transportation, that sort of thing. And so it's a good thing to participate with. And Wasatch Front Regional Council does a really good job of taking minutes and creating the plan.
Who will be our representatives?
Ended the meeting today, soon. And several small town mayors made some pretty good comments about
That's at the Wasatch Front.
Wasatch Front Regional. Yeah.
But not the RPO. So I think, I don't know how the RPO is structured on that agreement.
Well, what I learned on this is Mayor Fackrell, or Commissioner Fackrell was there too. And but what came out of it was that the smaller rural areas have sometimes a hard time with transportation or trails or things like that. And so I think it turned out favorable. The Morgan County and Morgan City had some say in it, and they actually gave us a positive feeling,
Consideration.
consideration, or whatever you want to call it. But, and this, I've talked to Blaine on this, and I just think it's another step for the city and the county coming together, unifying, and because what affects the county affects the city, and what affects the city affects the county. So
Now, Ty, prior to this agreement, just between Morgan City, Morgan County, we were tied in with Eastern Weber County with our RPO, with the Huntsville, Ogden Valley. We were all in one together, and that never did get a lot of traction. And I think we'll probably be better off with just functioning within our own county.
No, it functioned, and we actually produced a regional transportation plan. I think after the plan was created, then the what next question came up. Like how much more do we need to, stay in contact with Weber County? So we actually had quite a few successful meetings for about 2 years. So yeah, it was a good effort. I think at the end, though, after the plan was produced, it lost its momentum. If that makes sense. So just a couple project updates. The basement remodel's going well. We did a change order to redo the vestibule and the back for the employee entrance for the health department. So that's gonna also get started at any point. The HVAC work is happening this week. The commercial street realignment, they're getting ready to do pavement, I think next week. So it's coming right along.
Really moving.
It looks
Yep.
good.
Yep. So that's exciting.
I had
the-
somebody ask, and I
Oh.
really couldn't answer. Are they gonna tear out the old road, block it off?
Yeah, so we'll,
Expensive removing it, are we?
we're gonna just kind of grind it in place,
Okay,
right? But it'll be cut off. It'll not be accessible, and the other one's gonna have a shelf. You know what I mean? So
right.
I don't know exactly how it's gonna look, but it will be abandoned. It's not gonna be a bypass or a
Yeah, you won't have an option to race across that to pass the bus.
right, exactly.
Okay, well, that's what I told him. I said, but I don't know what it's gonna look like, but I would ask.
You know,
Yeah,
to
it's-
that point, well, a lot of people's asked me what the heck's going on, and once you explain what we're doing, I haven't had
Oh,
anybody,
yeah,
everybody's like
hallelujah.
favorable, like hallelujah, come on, hurry. That's what I've got. It's like, what the heck, what? And then you tell them, why don't they hurry? Is the next statement.
Yeah.
No, that's good. The train depot project still moving along really well. We had an on-site visit last week. Most of the concrete work is underway for the ramp and the platform up above, to get into the building. And then only one of the restrooms is gonna get, we're only required to have one of them be ADA compliant. There's 2 restrooms in there. And so we went back and forth on having the doors match, and we ended up with keep it as original as possible and only make one of the restrooms ADA compliant. But I think they're actually going to use the original door if they can, and just add extra panel to the side. They're going to see how it's built, but sometimes they said those older doors aren't meant to come apart ever. So we'll see how that that goes. But anyway, it's kind of interesting, the detail that they take on restoration work. It's been interesting. Let's see what else. Oh, the sidewalk project is finally getting started. That's the 100 North, the street where everything goes wrong. So we're hoping once it gets started, there's no shortage of concrete or no supply chain issues.
What caused the original delay?
Not being able to get materials.
Material.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, and so it was actually good that they recognized that. Everybody's on rations on I think it was the powder that was the delay on the mud. Anyway, it's getting started, and I think that's most of the project updates I just have a couple reminders on there that the Chamber of Commerce Golf Tournament's June 3rd. And the car show's this month, June 18th at the fairgrounds. And so that's a pretty cool event.
Who sponsors the car show?
It's we're one of the co-sponsors, but it's us in the county. So 2 years ago, there was a group that wanted to, it was Daryl Rupp at Napa and some other car enthusiasts that just wanted a community car show. They were trying to do it, and we kept saying, you got to have an organization, have some insurance, like what's the intent here? And as we got talking, we ended up sponsoring that first one, just to made it a city event. We still have representation on the committee. But it outgrew the park that first year. There was 150
Wow.
entries. But as we talked about it, they're like, we don't want to charge people to do entries. We just want basically to people that all have these cool cars in their garages in Morgan to pull them out and show them off. And then other people come up, but that's kind of how that got started. And now they're over at the fairgrounds.
And so years ago, Mayor Egbert did that over in the park. I mean, that could have been the genesis of it, but his sole purpose was to bring the community together.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, the whole committee is just citizen led, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, good.
Then UAMPS update. So at the last UAMPS meeting, we went through a process. Doug Hunter's retiring at the end of December. He's been, the main person at
Mastermind,
UAMPS, yeah, since forever, since the organization was created. And so Mason Baker was selected as the new CEO. He'll start in January. So if you know Mason, he's the legal counsel that gives most of the project updates on agreements and that sort of thing. And so he's real
Is he a
familiar with
full-time
all of our
employee?
projects.
Is he a full-time employee of UAMPS?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, he's their legal counsel then.
Well, that's what he functions as. They also have he's not their only legal counsel, but that's his
Internal
job.
though.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So just wanted to make you aware of that. So
Do you see any change in direction, or would it be just business as usual?
I see more opportunity for input. I think that there's when you have a strong long-term
Right.
head of an organization, the board feels, I think the board is going to be more engaged. So I think it's an opportunity we had quite the discussion about, well, if you don't like the direction something's going, that's why we're all there, is to vote. So that dynamic between CEO and board, I think the board's just figured, hey, we're in good hands for so long. And now it's more like we need to help out. And if we're going to develop resources in the future, we're all going to need to be vocal and have our interests kind of expressed. And so I think it's a good opportunity.
That'd be a good thing.
Yeah, it's going to be a good opportunity moving forward. I think I think we'll see more participation at the board level. People will feel more open to maybe ask dumb questions, if you want to put it that way.
Right.
So.
Oh, good.
Yep. Yeah, we have some real challenges, and all the entire power industry has some pretty
It
significant
seems like as
challenges.
time goes on, those challenges get bigger.
Worse. Yep.
Yeah.
Just a matter of when we recognize it and how we deal with it. But yeah, it's still it's a good group. It's incredible the stuff that they do for us, and keeping track of the billing and the shared resources and being able to buy and sell power from each other before we're exposed to the open market, all of those things. So it's a good organization. I think that's all I have.
The UAMPS is a not-for-profit, is that correct?
Yeah, that's
Just an association made up of the
public utilities. Yep.
you have the membership.
Yep.
Okay.
I have one other tight observation. I don't know. This past weekend I voiced my opinion last time at the city park, but I rented it Sunday morning for a family outing. I know 2 people had it Saturday. I had it Sunday morning. Somebody else had their name on the one pavilion after me Sunday afternoon. By the time I went over there Saturday night, we just have to do better. The tables were I had to spend a lot of time, popsicles, pop, and every garbage can was overflowing. I don't know what other options we have, but whoever came after me, I had to haul all my garbage. I don't know if they just left it tied for dogs to get in Sunday night, but we need to look at weekend use over at that Riverside Park.
Okay.
Because it was well past capacity by Saturday night, and we had, I know on the one pavilion I had rented, somebody else did, and the other pavilion, I think 2 people had rented that same Sunday, and there was no garbage space. There was, and I think there were 8 or 10 big green garbage cans overflowing.
Okay,
So
yeah, so
I'm
as
sure they had
demand
a
goes
mess.
up.
What's that?
So as demand goes up, we need to look at how the scheduling gets communicated to the park staff.
Yeah, or
Back and forth, so
haul off
what's
dumpster
included.
for summertime. I don't know how you
Yep.
keep, it's a rough neighborhood over there, to neighbors using the garbage cans, anything else. I don't know what, but it was.
I'm pretty
was
sure it's probably just park use, because it is our only, it's, everything's there, or, it's a park next to the river with the amenities.
and baseball games going on now and stuff. So yeah,
Okay. Well, that's a good point. We just did hire a new parks employee, an additional employee. So I'll go explore kind of how that happens too, with when reservations, if that gets communicated to the parks employees
And
to prep.
I'm hauling water back and forth. There's a spigot right there with a lock on it. I don't know what the procedures are for citizens to go. And I think, I didn't know, as my father-in-law said, the lights were on the one pavilion all week long. I was over there Saturday night and I shut them off. I got in and shut them off, but they said the lights have been on for an entire week. So anyway, there's just whatever we have to do to kind of clean that up, because I'm sure they had a heck of a mess this morning or Monday morning at the park.
Now we have to monitor for bears.
Yeah, I guess we left a bunch of stuff out to catch the bear
Yeah.
coming through.
Came out there.
Yeah, he was headed to the park for a reason.
Yeah,
Now we got it, all the popsicles.
they'll be back.
That's part of our economic development plan, is to
Yeah.
attract bears so we can hit the news.
Yeah, any news
Yeah.
is good news, right? Any press is
Yeah.
good press.
I appreciate that feedback, Jeffrey. So we'll see what I can find out.
Okay.
So can I ask you, Jeffrey, when you reserved it, what steps you go through to reserve it?
I come over to the office, talked to them, and got signed up, paid my money, and they said, you've got it for this 4-hour block. And my name was on the whiteboard at the park, and it was really simple. But it wasn't.
But there's not an after inspection of the park.
No, there was nothing to say, yeah, here's how you get into, well, I wasn't there to have to turn a light on in the dark or anything, but as far as a cleanup, we really ought to have something to,
A deposit or something, maybe.
yeah, it was.
Yeah,
It-
and typically
it
we
wasn't
don't clean
pretty.
in between. I think we get them ready for the day. And
Right.
And so that's something to look at, but the garbages we should be checking on, right? So it shouldn't go a full weekend. So there's both there, maybe there's a requirement that when people reserve it, they agree to clean up. But we also can't just ignore it either. We got to have someone around.
Sure.
Yeah, so if there is not a reservation made, it's first come first served. So anybody at the park can use those. So I think you have difficulty. I happen to be with a group that used it Saturday, and the tables are extremely dirty. So they used plastic to cover them because there's no way to clean them.
We want,
once
yeah,
you're there.
and I don't know, it just, there's a hose and a key, there's a spigot right there, but it's locked down. You can't even
Was
screw
it
anything off.
potable? Maybe you shouldn't be drinking it. I don't know.
I think it was a blue spigot. I think it should be, but it's been there forever, way before secondary. but it's locked down. So kids
Yeah.
don't leave it on and run it for days on end.
Gentlemen, I'm gonna have to leave you.
So,
Thanks, Gary.
You already did, Gary. How was dinner?
I wish it was dinner. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Good night.
Thanks, Gary. Okay.
I've got one more question real quick. So the secondary water restrictions are in place, but I've got some people ask me, they want to, they got some neighbors that aren't following it. So I've been asked, what do we do? How do we go? Who's in charge of that? I
so
mean,
they're
I'm
put out
trying
as-
to deny any deniability for this city because I don't think it's our problem, but I don't know where to send them or what to say or what
So-
to do.
the other thing is the restriction is on the secondary water,
Correct.
not, I mean, on the company, not the users. The secondary water put out the recommendation.
Right.
It's not a restriction, so there's no penalties, there's no, right? So it's just telling everyone you should only be watering X amount of times per week, but I don't know that the secondary water association put it out in terms of restrictions versus,
Recommendation.
uh-huh.
So really,
I mean, their approach seems to be that when it's gone, it's gone.
so
use
so
it
if you had-
wisely.
I mean, basically you could have one neighbor watering every day of the week.
Well, I got one that waters 4 times a day. One day.
Well,
it'd
and
be
that's exactly why the state's requiring meters.
Yeah.
And the pay structure is gonna end up metering every single,
Tell them to sit tight. It'll change in 6 more years. or
Well,
8
the
more
problem
years.
with that is the water meters. Somebody's telling me that they're like 2 years back ordered.
Right.
so, yeah, it's not a city thing, but it's also just to, just say, short of public shaming, there's no,
Mhm.
and, yeah. It's hard, but it's always the neighbor that uses the most too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's never myself. Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying,
Those
man, I'm
neighbors,
just repeating
yeah.
what I've been.
Those neighbors
No,
get
I'm just-
beat up, don't they?
I'm just saying that it's always like, that's the hard thing. It's like, I don't want to let my yard look
Crap.
less than, when my neighbor's keeping theirs 100%, so,
Yeah.
but yeah, and that's kind of like the approach. They're the ones that are getting cut back on how much they're gonna be able to use. And when the water's gone, or on a certain day, if there's not enough pressure, there's just not enough
Yeah.
pressure.
How's
so,
our water holding up? The springs.
good so far. We haven't seen any drop in spring flow,
Okay.
so we keep getting these little weekly storms that I think have been
Mm-hmm.
helping, so.
Been a benefit. And as long as we're on water, North Morgan, any update there?
I haven't heard anything back. We finished up and passed the resolution and sent it their way. Unless the mayor has any other news, I haven't heard anything.
No, just tons of calls about when,
When they're gonna sign it?
well, that and if we're gonna lower the fees for 8,000 gallons, well, not for the 8,000, but the overage fees.
Well, that wouldn't matter to a lot of them because they get their allotment, right?
Well,
I don't know why they,
sign it.
yeah, I'm not sure why they'd be worried about that. Some of them, got what, 80,000 gallons they can use
Yeah, but not right now. But we're still,
until they sign it, right?
there's still 5 things that have to take
Mhm.
place.
Okay.
That's the only complaint I really had. I talked to Jordash Wardell today and he said that the sewer's about completed. Is that true?
should be getting close. I don't know if it's almost complete because there's the whole pump and structure that needs to be built to, the piping might be almost in.
Piping's what he's talking about, yes.
Yeah, yes.
Okay,
And
Some
almost means it's
items?
probably, it shouldn't take too much longer, right? So
right.
I'll give a more of an update on that one next time. I didn't update on that last time.
It'll be interesting to watch that project through midsummer, July and August, when typically we hit that bad spell for us and we go septic. It'll be interesting to see how this does for us. Performance, it's kind of going to be interesting. I was talking to another municipality that was in the same situation and they're looking at doing the same thing. I can't even remember where I was at, but I go some places now.
I don't know if it's a good thing for me to mention or not, but our water quality actually went up since we turned off the surface aerators. So we're getting the stink complaints, right?
I
But I think,
didn't work.
Oh, I've been hit with that one too.
yeah, so that part will improve, but our just by not agitating
The
you know,
top.
the water so much, it's allowed the water quality to improve. That's probably a temporary thing. It probably won't sustain that way without air. But in the short term, we're like, let's get this project done. The water's nasty. And then Kel's like, well, it's actually testing out better than
The turtles are thriving.
yeah, whatever natural magic's happening. So
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other discussion on the council?
Steve, I've got just two items that we haven't talked about from Planning Commission.
Okay.
Yeah, just in quick, like,
Go
ahead. We've talked about the Rupp and the Colville subdivisions, but in addition, the Planning Commission last week reviewed a conditional use application for a studio apartment in the building, the Grounds for Coffee on 167 Commercial Street, and they approved that. Conditional use being that it's on the main level, on the main floor, that it wasn't, I guess, up above. And then the Andertons were back with their subdivision, and there was some what would be the word? There was there were quite a few items, in particular a shed that had some setback requirements that needed to be discussed, some uncertainty on how homes would face, and information that maybe should have been part of, again, in my mind, part of the plan that they had drawn up from their engineer. There were some code issues that should have probably been addressed. So they pretty much went back to the drawing board on that one. But I think they felt, maybe even on both sides, that they'll be able to resolve most of the issues. And then, of course, I think all of us, I'm not sure if were you there, but and I don't know if you're going to talk about the general plan or not, but we were all part of that for a couple hours. Yeah.
Yeah, Ty and I have talked a little bit about the general plan. And I think we're sort of drafting up something to bring in front of the council that how can I word it?
Wouldn't
feel like
the
city
planning
ought
commission
to
have
take
to do
ownership of the plan instead of
planning commission?
well, let me put it this way, Mayor. So that project is over, right? So the contractors completed their, and they were this last public meeting, they prepare the proposed plan and it's ready for adoption. Now, if we want to take it, we don't have to adopt it. If the planning commission isn't ready, we basically just say, the contractor's done their job. They've given us
their input framework.
tons of input. And so that's what I was just talking to the mayors is we can't just keep having this contractor on this sideline to say, now we're gonna take a couple months and just keep working it over, right?
Yeah, the point is, if
but-
we wanted to do more, we'd have to hire them.
Well, yeah, they met the terms of the contract, and it's not a terrible thing. I just think, well, it's a good opportunity just for me, I guess, to let you know, they've met their obligations, we've paid them. But we also have our own, it's a responsibility of the planning commission. And so I don't see that hurts us to take what they've left us, take ownership of it and make whatever changes, to that draft that we're comfortable with. We have a planner that can facilitate, right? So our contract planner, if he engages with the planning commission and the council and we adopt, I think it's just tweaks here and there, I don't think the whole plan needs rewritten or anything like that. It's not a format issue. It's just the content. And so anyway, that's just kind of where we're at. It can.
So in that light though, Ty, does the planning commission run with it until they say, here's a project that we can recommend?
Yep.
And then, it could similarly be vetted for a period with the council too. It was interesting. I don't think you were there in the meeting for the entirety, or did you?
Not the entirety. I just came in at the towards the end.
For the 2 hours that were spent, I'm not sure that, and maybe in part, I think Nate felt the same, but I'm not sure that we covered a lot of ground on the direction that maybe we want to go. And that could be because there's a lot of different thoughts or ideas because there were so many people there. Nate talked about maybe a different format or different way of doing it. He's giving that some consideration on his part to hopefully streamline. The concept came up that we take one section at a time and maybe go through it. So I think when the day's done, and I would guess the same would hold true for the planning commission as it does some of the comments I've heard otherwise, that the density may not be in place where we want it.
Yeah. And, just to be fair, our own people really haven't been engaged in the development of the plan until now that it's
Last
getting
minute,
proposed.
Yeah.
And so it's not I don't see that as a problem. I mean, the contractor's done what they've been asked to do.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But then to go back and say, hey, here's a bunch of things we don't like about it is
that
just means we just take it from here, right? And it was a large group, but it was also very productive, I think, to get all of the perspectives out on the table. And then, at the end of the day, it is a general plan. And I think a lot of the comments that I wasn't there the whole time, I'm just saying a lot of the comments that I did hear is more on how is this going to get implemented, which is addressed through actual ordinances and zoning.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's still healthy discussion, I think, because, you just wanted to make sure we're going in the right general direction.
Yeah, and I would suspect that planning commission would have the similar feelings that a council would. I don't think that, I guess my point is, I don't think we're spinning our wheels, and in that light, I'm willing to let them run with spinning our wheels by letting them do something and then us completely reworking it. But I think it'd be well to let them see what they come up with, and it's a good chance it'll align with some of our thoughts. Yeah.
Well, I like Nate entertained meeting with the city to discuss some of the things on there instead of, to get ideas from say the mayor or and the planning commission chair and talk about things,
Mm-hmm.
which because my newness of it, when I looked at the plan, I panicked. Because it has a lot of things that
And you know,
Bring in my eyesight, my eyes widen, and so that's, I think, what Nate is
Feeling.
working towards is a happy medium of what we want the city to look like. The city, the general plan is not cement.
but you know, Ty, along the way, during the year that we've been doing this, or a year plus, and you'll notice if we go back, some of my comments would zero in on the input that was being provided. And and I think you made reference to it. I felt that maybe that input hadn't been as robust as it should have been. And I think we might be feeling some of the effect of that now because, we have to, you know, we have to make a decision, but yet, you know, we had committees that came together that provided input, and you'd see the public input, you'd see the surveys. And I think if we go back to the very beginning, the very first survey, there was a definite feel that things are okay the way they are. And I think and that may be why we haven't seen a lot of community involvement, is because we're doing okay. So now all of a sudden we say we're going to change that. It's probably woke a few people up.
Well, and we're, you know, yeah. And the other part on the input is it was more countywide, because we did a joint project with the county. A lot of the perspective, I think, got lumped in with county perspective. So as a county, where are you going to put everybody? Well, you're going to put them in the city because that's where the infrastructure lives, right?
Mm.
And then the increased density in the city was to offset more open space in the county, so that it kind of relieves development pressure.
Yeah, good point. I like the.
And so that was some of the input, or so then when you look at it as a city, and in our little narrow focus, you're like, wait a minute.
And I think that's, boy, you're spot on, because now we're looking at it as just a 3 square mile. Morgan City is only 3 square miles. And does this fit?
And the other thing that's interesting is in all of these developments that we do, we don't refer back to the general plan very often. When I first got here, this is what's interesting to me, is I'm like, when was our general plan last updated? Well, 1999, right? And I was like, oh,
1899.
1999. Well, let's update it. And the feedback I got was, why in the heck would we go update our general plan? Right? And it's like, I don't even care if the general plan says the exact same thing. At least I know it's been vetted and it's, you know, it's current for the next 20 years. So even though our general plan is what it is, or whatever direction we're going, and we feel like things are just fine, as long as we can limit growth. If we double our population, we're probably going to see that our current general plan isn't adequate in a few areas. It doesn't change, you know.
I mean, these are all ideas. Again, that we're starting down a vetting process the road right now.
Yeah, so it's just awesome.
Do that tonight, but these are all ideas that need to be discussed.
Right. And then, so I'm just saying, like, this is kind of the path that we've been on, and now everybody's to the table and talking about it, and it's awesome. But it also doesn't change anything until the point of development. So there's a lot of things in the general plan in 1999 that still haven't played out according to the general plan, just because there's still X amount of property that hasn't been developed. So it's an awesome tool. It's a great discussion, but it's the main point of the general plan is it will guide our next set of discussion points, which is our land use, our zones, and our ordinances, because that's the guiding document that says, here's the other decisions that, you know, we're going to refer back to our general plan. But it's a important document, and I'm glad it's being discussed.
It's a good process for sure.
Yep.
By the way, I'm trying to establish eye contact. I realized I'm looking at a monitor, so I am looking at you.
Where would you like me? Where would you like me to look?
Look at it. I am looking at you directly in the eyes, but it's probably not working.
Well, you're so far away, I couldn't
You don't want to do that.
do that anyway. So anyway, we're on a good path. I think we just, same thing, just,
Move forward.
it's a good starting point. Even though,
Item that I failed to do at the start, and that is to recognize that Tony and Jeff aren't present tonight.
and excuse Denise,
Use them. Is there any more discussion?
just excuse Denise and thank Teresa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Denise is.
Thank you, Teresa. You did a great job.
Yeah, appreciate you being here.
Meeting's adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, Ty. Get healthy.
Take a COVID test, huh?
I did.
All right.
I can't even win one of those. It's not just at work that I'm negative.
Well, that means you've had it 4 times.
Okay, see ya.
Okay, bye.